Hello and welcome back to LTC Heroes Live by Experience Care. I am at the Ohio Healthcare Association Convention and Expo, and today I'm joined by a unique pair of friends and family members. They come from Hennis Care Center, Dave Hennis and Bryan Hennis. Welcome to the program, Dave.
Thank you, Peter. We're glad to be here.
Welcome, Bryan.
Thanks. Appreciate you having us.
Excited to hear about your all's family story, and I'll start off with you, Dave, because I've read through your website. Your history in Ohio is important. The history in your family of long-term care is important. Will you tell me about how you first got into this industry? Tell me about your family.
Sure. Family business. We've been in business for 75 years this year, celebrating 75 years. And in a family business, you do a lot of things that you don't expect that you're going to do because your mom and dad said you're going to. So you're going to wash dishes, you're going to be a nurse aide, you're going to be maintenance, you're going to mow, you're going to pull weeds, you're going to do activities with residents, all those things that you don't plan for, but in the summer when you're in school, that's what you do.
Can confirm.
Last thing that I really did expect to do was this. I went to school for education to become a teacher, taught for 3 years, but was drawn back to it. It's a great profession. Working with the senior population and even young people today we see with the short-term stays is just a blast.
Can you remember when you decided you were going to go down a different path, you were going to go down education, at what point did you see, oh, I need to get back into long-term care? Did you want to be around your father? Was it a specific resident who had changed the way that you look at the world? Is there anything tangible that you can remember, like, I don't know, maybe I was just homesick?
I think just because it was family business, over the dinner table we talked about the business, and every evening or every holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, that conversation was always enjoyable, fun, interesting, and it just drew me back.
Now, tell me about the origins of the Hennis story, because I've read it online, but I feel like you'll do it better, more justice than I would by reading it.
Sure, thank you. Well, it was started by my grandmother, my dad's mom. She was a PN because they didn't have a licensed practical nurse, and she's a practical nurse. She started a little 32 bed rest home then, not nursing home. They didn't have nursing homes when we started 75 years ago. And Grandma had a garden that she brought fresh vegetables in the season and canned for vegetables in the winter. The interesting thing for me, kind of humorous in a sense, was every Sunday was chicken dinner. So you knew it was Sunday because it was chicken dinner. And that was fresh chickens that were killed on Saturday by the maintenance guy and prepared by the dietary department there at the nursing home. There was also a carbohydrate fest, not just chicken, because they had homemade noodles, dressing, and mashed potatoes with the chicken, and usually some fresh vegetables out of the garden. It's just really fun. Grandma was a very unique person as a nurse, and good, strong-willed lady. Thought it was important to take care of people, and those people needed to be taken care of. They didn't have family, most of them, so that's how it all kind of started.
Bryan, I'm interested in when you realized that you were going to get into family business and in long-term care, or maybe you don't know, maybe you're being told right now. Tell me about when you said, this is not just a family business, this is my business, and I want to dedicate my life to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So echo a lot of what my father said earlier. I spent a lot of my summers and when I was growing up down at the facility, working in maintenance, cleaning off the roof, working in activities, just generally being around the residents. And in fact, my brother and sister were involved as well. And for a while, my brother did quite a bit of painting around the facility, and he got the joking nickname of Paintnance department. So when I originally went to school, it wasn't a foregone conclusion. My father and grandfather never pressured me to join the business, and I went to Ohio State originally for finance and marketing. But I found that my heart really was in taking care of folks. So I ended up having a conversation with my mom and asking her about it, and her and I had a very deep conversation about the importance of making sure what you do every single day has a positive effect on those around you. So there's a lot of folks out there that do great work, but at the same time, I felt like my calling was in long-term care and helping to take care of folks.
I love the story you just mentioned with having that conversation with your mom. Can you think of a specific example? You're a lot younger than me, younger than your father, a specific example where you realized that you were making a difference in the person's life. Either you were helped with someone in their passing, you helped in their isolation through COVID, or maybe you filled a surrogate son role for somebody who missed their family member long ways away.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the folks that we deal with, like my father had alluded to earlier, a lot of them don't have family that are close, or their families are unable to take care of them for whatever reason. So a lot of them, they come in, they've had social isolation, or they haven't been able to get out, especially during the pandemic, and they have a lot to say and a lot of stories to tell. And as you get to know people and take care of them and talk with them, there's just so many fascinating stories that have come out of those situations, that it's just really something special. And I've loved that about my position and about my role. So,
Dave, I want to ask you about leadership style, and I'll ask you to start from the top, go back 75 years. What was the leadership style of your ancestors, and how are you different? And then I'll ask you about your son's leadership style.
Sure. Well, my grandmother was a very stern person. She was a nurse, and she had high expectations, and she wanted things done right, and that was just the way it was going to be. And back then, 75 years ago, that's the way it was. there was no ifs, ands, or buts about that. My mom and dad then took over when my grandmother passed away. My mother was the administrator. My dad was kind of the operations person. Those two were very different personalities. My dad was a big old teddy bear, 6'4", 250 pounds, and walking down the hallway looking to give hugs, and my mom was walking down the hallway looking to make sure everything was done right. When they didn't, she had to come a little direct meeting with them. And Dad would then go over and soothe their soul a little bit after my mom read them a little bit of the riot act, but all in a good way, a good-hearted mom wanted things done right too, just like Grandma. From me, my leadership style is I have high expectations of people. But long ago, Mom and Dad taught us that when we hire folks, we hire by reading their heart, because we can teach them the skills, but we can't change their heart. We are who we are by our heart, and that can't be changed by us. And that's been a very important part of our organization. We've just been blessed with good people. Every once in a while, we'll get fooled by somebody, but that's normal. That's human nature. And so, I have good people around me. I trust them. I expect them to make good decisions. We give them the tools they need to be successful. We lead by example in terms of being a positive person, and smiles are free in our organization. Hugs are free too. So that's how we lead.
Before you answer how you would describe your son's leadership style, I want to pause on what you just said, trying to identify their heart. Are there any questions that you've kind of polished and crafted over the years to help you to try to read their heart? And either you ask a question, you see their eyes or their body language?
Not so much questions per se, but years ago, probably 25 years ago, we started instituting group interviews. So there would be multiple folks from various departments. So if a nurse assistant was interviewing, there might be somebody from dietary and the director of nursing, and maybe somebody from maintenance or housekeeping. The logic behind that is exactly what you're saying, so that we can sit back while they're answering a question somebody asked. The other 3 or 4 people can be kind of reading those subtle things that people show in their face or in their eyes, and so that's how we do that. That's how we're reading the heart, because you can't hide that.
I think I've only been interviewed in a group setting one time. I was 21 years coming out of college. Got interviewed to be a social worker for HIV/AIDS population, homeless population in Boston, and one person in the room said, "Peter, what are you going to do when they offer you heroin and then try and sell sexual relations to you?" And I'm like, I'm 21. I don't know how to talk about this. And everyone in the room was reading my reaction. Now that you say that, they were there for my reaction, not for my answer.
Exactly.
So how would you describe Bryan's leadership style?
Well, the good news for me is Bryan's smarter than I am. That's a wonderful thing for him. But he leads by example also. He's confident as he goes down the hall. He knows people's names better than I do. That's one of my weaknesses. I'm not very good with names. That was tough when I was a school teacher, because kids would be offended. But old folks are less offended. They're willing to cut you a break. But as I say, he leads by example. He knows our folks. He knows our residents. He demonstrates that he loves them in a lot of different ways, whether it's the power of touch, with just a touch of the hand, or a hand on the shoulder, or a hug. whatever. And those are leadership skills that are missing today in a lot of places, but not our place.
Bryan, I come from a family business background as well, and I find that those are differentiators inside of your communities, almost like that leads your branding and leads your story. Mm-hmm. Is it easy for you all to walk around and your community understand what you guys represent? And if so, how do you translate that, whether it be on your website or the way that you have a mission or the way that you teach your team?
I think a lot of what we've done is, like my dad said, just kind of instituted that almost family-like culture. We're always there for our folks, no matter what's going on in their life. We've had situations where folks were, had a house fire recently with a former employee, and our whole team banded together to raise money and to raise furniture, and everyone kind of banded together to try to get this person back into a home and get their kids situated so they get, there wouldn't be a disruption in anything going on in their lives. So, and that was even just a former employee. So, those connections run deep for us. You don't have to even still be working for us. We've always loved and taken care of our people like that.
I find, having done more than 500 hours of interviews with long-term care executives in the last year and a half, I find that it's often hard for leaders to take off their humble hat and brag about what they're doing well. So what I'm going to ask you, Bryan, is what is unique about the way that you all run your team? Let me rephrase that. What is unique? What are the differentiators that are the reason that people want to come work with you and the Hennis family?
Well, that's a hard-hitting question there, isn't it? I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I would just again say that family atmosphere. We've always taken good care of our folks, and we've always been there for them, and that's, you can't fake that. You can always talk a talk, and everyone has a great mission statement that reads out on their website. But it's one thing to say it and another thing to do it and follow through on it. And we've been doing that for generations now. So I think the community and folks around us know that and understand that. And, we've had residents that are multi-generation. We've had staff that are multi-generation. So we think that's kind of speaks for itself.
What's something that you learned about yourself during COVID? Either the way that you communicate or the things you don't need in life, the things you do need in life. What did you learn about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was quite a bit that I learned about myself. So we were fortunate that the first about 6 months of COVID, we were able to keep COVID out of both of our buildings. However, as it grew in our community, it found its way into our buildings. And, when we had a lot of staff off in the beginning, a lot of the managers stepped up. A lot of folks were staying and living at the facility and staying in hotels nearby so that they could be on call and working 16, 18 hours a day so that they could be there. Because the last thing anybody wants is, in an unfortunate situation, there were folks that passed away, and nobody wants to pass away or be sick by themselves in their room. In fact, my dad and I were just talking to a friend of ours that got COVID in January, and he had to haul up in his basement for 10 days, and he was miserable. So same situation for residents. They have to be isolated to their room. Anytime someone's coming in, they have to come in full PPE. It's very hard to hear and understand someone. So a lot of those facial and body language things that you would get are gone. So taking that extra time, taking that extra step to make sure that you're making people feel comfortable, that you're there for them when they're sick and you're there for them when they pass away is huge for us.
Dave, in the last 3 years, there hasn't been a lot of celebration in long-term care. And I would even say, as I mentioned, it's pretty hard for us to celebrate. We're pretty hard on ourselves. It's human-to-human industry, 24 hours a day. There's not a lot of celebration. But there's some individuals on your team that deserve to be celebrated. You were talking about that big heart. Who are some frontline caregivers inside of the Hennis family organization that you think, man, these people just completely represent what we're aiming for, and this is who should be the ambassadors of long-term care?
I'm going to name two people. One person is Ruthie Meese. Ruthie Meese has been with us for over 30 years. Ruthie Meese is a worked in dietary for years, but now she is kind of a quasi-state tested nursing assistant hostess. She's kind of an ambassador really for us to help residents with all those little things that sometimes fall into the cracks with people being so busy. Love Ruthie. She's just a wonderful person. The residents love her. She loves the residents. She's special. And then I'm going to name a second person. That's Kim Zontini. Kim is our administrator who grew up with us as a brand new nurse, and then became a charge nurse, and then became a director of nursing, and then an admissions person, and then went back to school to become a nursing home administrator. Kim is our administrator at our building in Bolivar, Hennis Center of Bolivar. Exceptional person, just a really good clinician, really good heart, good from a financial standpoint, which you don't find all those things meshed together very often in an administrator. We love Kim.
Gentlemen, it's been great having you on. To wrap up, I'm going to ask Bryan a question, and it comes from a quote of a football player. I have a specific quote that always makes me think what we want to focus on and why we're here, and it's from Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis says that they pay me for Monday through Saturday. Sundays are free. What would you do for free no matter what in long-term care? Your favorite part of the day or your favorite part of the week?
Oh, gosh. Well, first, I'd like to say go Browns. But I love that quote as well. And my favorite part of my job is my residents. Just getting to know them and communicating and knowing their story is just fascinating, because there's just so much there and so much history, and you can sit down and you can talk to someone, and it can be someone totally unassuming on their surface, and they can just have an absolutely fascinating story. And you can sit there and talk to them for an hour and really get to know somebody at a level you would never get to do if you were just passing by, or if you were sitting behind a desk. So that's my favorite part of the job. It's what I love, and that would be my free Sunday.
I don't buy on LTC Heroes very often, but I did. I have one more question for you. What's one thing that you learned from your father and you most admire him for?
Oh gosh, well, my dad has taught me an awful lot. But I think one of the biggest things that he's taught me, and that I've always struggled with, and he continues to teach me on, is patience. Patience is a big factor in our industry. You touched on it earlier. It's people taking care of people, and there's tens of millions of touch points every day and every year in our industry, and there's plenty of opportunities for frustration, especially over these last couple of years. So it's just a matter of stepping back and centering yourself and finding patience and love.
Bryan, Dave, it's a pleasure having you on. I'm really thankful that Kathy and Heidi has introduced us, and that I could meet you all here at Ohio. Hopefully next year I'll run into you again. Thank you so much for joining LTC Heroes.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
This episode of LTC Heroes is brought to you by Experience Care, the most configurable and intuitive EHR on the market. Visit experience.care/guarantee to take a test drive and see why Capterra named Experience Care the best value assisted living software in 2021.